All right. So now this is another thing. They're doing this cubism, and now all the other artists are going, "Oh shit, this is the new shit. This is the new shit.
What do we do?
I better. I guess I got to try cubism. I guess what is this?" And they're moving forward the dialogue of art. I mean, in a really
Mm.
meaningful way, and all the other artists are trying to figure out what it means. And I think Matisse even did some work on it. Other artists like Juan Gris and Fernand Leger were doing their own cubist work. And then what happens? 1914. What is coming, Abby?
World War One.
World War One then intervened with their wanky experimentations in perspective and form. I mean, listen, I should be kinder. It's just a lot of this stuff does leave me feeling a little bit cold. Contra the like breathless reception that it seems to receive. Brock went to war. And of course,
Yep.
I think Picasso was spared because
Oh,
he
was
was,
he?
yeah, I think he was
Because he
yeah,
was
yes.
stateless, or?
Well, no, he was Spanish. So
Oh
Spain
yeah, yeah.
Spain was neutral in World War One.
Hmm.
So all his friends go to war, and Apollinaire went to war and was wounded, later dying in 1918 from the flu. A lot of people died from the flu. Picasso wasn't drafted, kept working throughout the war,
Hmm.
and okay, and he
Single-handedly moving art forward.
yes, he's yeah he's doing it by himself. The okay, Cubism evolved and softened into what some call crystal cubism or other post-war styles. But Picasso was about to head into a new chapter of life as well, involving new relationships, new victims, and new artistic directions. And that does bring us to the complicated love life. And I have a whole section devoted to the tempestuous side of his life, right?
Oh
Um,
gosh.
yeah, so we are going to shift focus a little bit here, and we're going to talk about the women and
Hmm.
their shape on his life. And all right,
It's going to bring me much less joy, I am sure.
it's going to bring you a lot less joy, Abby. Abby, we're 2 hours in. I'm just gonna give myself a quick rest here for my throat and
Uh-huh.
everything. In the
Yeah.
meantime, can you tell people, number one, where are you at now with Picasso? Where do you stand
Uh-huh.
now with the man? How do you feel about him? Are you rooting for him? Uh, what of the work we've looked at has most impressed you or left like left an impression? What do you like the most or what struck you the most?
Hmm.
And then if you have a little time, could you just briefly tease what you're working on? What's your next core episode going to be on? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't know if I'm rooting for him, mostly because he's locking women in apartments. But I am really enjoying the art and looking at the art and analyzing the art. I think the beginning of Cubism, the painting of the women in the brothel really impressed me. It There's a lot of emotion to it, and it is very confrontational, and it feels very alive. There's a lot of movement to it. So I'm excited about where he's going with his art. I feel like he's encountered some sadnesses, which I feel a bit sorry for him. It's difficult with his friend committing suicide and things like that. So yeah, I feel for him a little bit. I'm excited about his talent, but I'm not entirely sure if I'm rooting for him, and that might just be colored by what I already know about where he's going to end up. But the person that I will be covering next, I believe, had a friendship with him during the sort of pre-World War II period, I think. And that is Lee Miller, who was a model that was discovered by Condé Nast when he pulled her out of the road because she was about to get hit by a car. And She went on from modeling to also become a photographer and had moved to Paris in this same time that Picasso was there and was a student and muse and lover of Man Ray. I don't think she was one of Picasso's women, and good for her. Uh, but yes, she was the first person to go into Hitler's apartment after he died, and there's a very famous photograph of her in his bath with her muddy army boots sitting next to it. So I'm super excited to delve into her life.
Cannot wait, Abby. I'm really excited. I know everybody will be excited to hear that too. And I think I've got Wagner next. I think I'm finally trying to do Wagner.
Right.
Fun. So good. All right, we're going to be dwelling in this period, sort of. Wagner's a little earlier, I
Mm.
think, but cool. I mean, I have to check in with my feelings about Pablo to be a little goofy. I I am sympathetic to a clearly a singular genius and a man who
Hmm.
is driven by a kind of manic obsession with painting. He knows he has what it takes to be a painter.
Mm.
He's already making money. He's already blasting through convention. He has all of the classical training that he could need, could mimic anybody, any style, but he knows to plant his horny flag in history. I do. I think of him as like the horniest, one of the horniest artists to ever live. He and Brando come to mind for some reason. Like I
Mm.
do sort of pair them together as fellow monsters, with a similar footprint in terms of influence, right? I mean, I
Mm.
sometimes have to explain to people why everybody now acts like Marlon Brando, and so you don't see it. But if you go back and you look, it makes perfect sense, and you can
Mhm.
see it. And I think most actors today will tell you, yes, film acting, we're still
Yeah.
doing Marlon Brando. We're trying to do Marlon Brando. So with this, maybe I don't know how visual artists now, but I think they would acknowledge a similar influence of certainly Picasso in that milieu anyway. Um, and thinking about that early childhood and the sister who died, the brutality of that,
Mm.
and also the kind of sadness. You think about that Spanish society and the sort of patriarchal macho, and his dad sounds like a bit of a failure and a
Yeah.
letdown and kind of a nobody who like folds, even at the sort of his son's own talent, which
He
they supported
folded
him.
so quickly.
Yeah, and then they sort of like half disowned him from what I can tell, and it was just sort of like
Yeah.
icky and not great, and then the sort of like relative provincialism of Spanish painting and art to Paris, to France. I think he came at it, and
Mm.
this is something I don't have in notes or anything, but I think he came at it with like a chip on his shoulder too. Like I'm gonna
Well,
be
there aren't many Spanish masters, so
right. Right. And he comes to Paris because he knows that's where he needs to be. But that Spanishness never leaves him. And
mm.
I think it serves him because it keeps him kind of like out of it a little bit. He has a different perspective, but he has all the talent and the willpower that anyone could
Mm.
could want. And for him it was always the painting first, but he did you sort of do get the impression that there was some vampiric, my muse, come to me.
Mm.
I will propel art forward hornily with your, I promise I'll get off that, but he gives it that impression, doesn't he? He's just like he's so virile and like vital and intense, and then the art is just so intense, and I may read from it in a bit, but they did say that he's like I think it was in the more favorable book, but it's like he was one of the most charismatic people uh,
Right.
of that period. I mean, that gaze they would describe women when they describe it, they would just go. I mean, they would just fall into this, right? And there's just this passion and this talent and everything. Well, we'll get to the Gillot woman, and her description of it is just wonderful because she knows exactly what's going on. She does not need it. She recounts his
Yeah.
like numerous attempts, little maneuvers to try to get her alone, and then he would kiss her, and she would allow it, but she was always kind of 1 foot out, and then she sort of played that long game. He wasn't used to that, and all of it. She sort of played hard to get, and then whatever. So
Hmm.
fun. All right, let's get to the women. Are you ready? More women.
Hmm.
Okay, and again,
Brace
there are.
yourselves.
I know. Yeah, brace yourselves, right? Let's say it again. There are only two kinds of women, goddesses and doormats, said Pablo Picasso. And so let's just sort of, we're going to touch on the thing we're going to cover more on the After Dark, the Marina Picasso bio, or memoir, rather. This is from the Paris Review. I'm going to read a few paragraphs of this. How Picasso bled the women in his life for art. Cody Della Strati, whatever. This is 2017. 16 years ago, Marina Picasso, one of Pablo Picasso's granddaughters, became the first family member to go public about how much her family had suffered under the artist's narcissism. No one in my family ever managed to escape from the stranglehold of this genius, she wrote in her memoir. He needed blood to sign each of his paintings. My father's blood, my brother's, my mother's, my grandmother's, and mine. He needed the blood of those who loved him. Whew, how do you really feel?
Hmm.
After his second wife barred much of the family from his funeral, and we'll get to all this later, the family fell fully to pieces. Pablito Picasso's grandson drank a bottle of bleach and died. Paulo Picasso's
Oh.
son died of alcoholism, born of depression. Marie Therese Walter, Picasso's young lover, between his first wife, Olga, and his next mistress. We're going to get to these ladies. I'm going a little bit out of order because I want to like set the stage for how dark this actually is. Dora
Mm.
Maar later hanged himself. Even Roque eventually fatally shot herself. Women are machines for suffering, Picasso told Francois Gillot,
Oh
his
God.
mistress, after Mar. After they embarked on their affair when he was 61 and she was 21, he warned Gillot of his feelings once more. For me, there are only two kinds of women, which we've said. Um, and uh, and then Marina said this of Pablo. He submitted them, women, to his animal sexuality, tamed them, bewitched them, ingested them, and crushed them onto his canvas. After he had spent many nights extracting their essence, once they were bled dry, he would dispose of them. All right. So, it's not going to get much more unfavorable than that. I'm not here to run cover for Pablo. There are counter. You can read this other biography that is a little more warm to the
Hmm.
great man, but you can see why people go, "Wow, this is tough. This is a tough one."
Yeah.
Yeah, just the age gaps alone right now are woo, not good,
Uh,
not good. Don't love that. Um, so I got a little something from the real family story. This is the favorable biography. Let me see here. We're trying to cover for him. Give a good impression. This is what he writes here. My grandfather was a sun king, a fixed point in the firmament around whom women moved like planets in perpetual orbit, sometimes coming closer, other times drifting further away, assuming that he had not banished them to burn out at the far end of the universe. Legend has it that Picasso was one of the most seductive men of the 20th century, yet he scarcely possessed the traditional attributes of the type. He was short, around 5 feet 5 inches, stocky and heavy set. Once asked whether he was lacking anything in life, he replied, "Yes, another 2 inches." However, he made up for this lack of stature elsewhere. I'm sure that joke has layers, right? Um, Tell me about it. I mean, he dressed the worst is 5'11. The guys who are 5'11. I feel for you little bros down there. That's tough. Um, am I right, Abby? I'm right. He dressed elegantly, particularly from 1915 when he started to make more money, and for the next 20 years in what his friends jokingly called his Duchess period. In the early 1930s, the photographer Beaton, who was expecting to photograph a wild bohemian in a messy studio, saw Picasso arrive wearing an elegant navy blue suit with a silk tie in his immaculate French Regency-style apartment in the Rue de Boetie. This tailor-made smartness, worthy of London's famous Savile Row, was a visible sign of his wealth and his entrance into a new world. Even after he had abandoned this ostentatious elegance, he retained right up to the end of his life a personal style, and it was the famous sailor's pullover and shorts, right, of the post-war period, and even a certain coquettishness evident in his propensity for combining various materials such as velvet and tweed and of colors and prints. He listened a lot without necessarily talking, but as soon as he started to speak, his enthusiasm and charm proved irresistible, qualities that were of particular appeal to women. With a piercing look and a few direct, incisive words, he could usually obtain the favor he desired. He had an increasing number of affairs as time went by. And so, yes, we're going to go into them. So this guy really, obviously wants to paint his grandfather in a more favorable way.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, so if you're one of those guys who's out there complaining about not being 6 foot, all you
right.
need is to buy a nice suit and invent an art movement, and
You
you too can be a Sun King.
just invent modern art, fellas. Hey, it's manlet.
Have you
See,
tried
have,
inventing modern art?
what do women want? Abby said they want consistency. No, they want talented manlets with piercing eyes and thick accents. That's what they actually want. We do our best on Art of Darkness, but
But only
don't.
if they're goddesses or doormats.
Right, right. Strongly recommend you do not take life advice from parasocial relationships with podcasters on the internet, right? We are joking half the time, and if you can't tell, I can't help you. All right. So we're going to cover one of the first big women, and this is Fernand, right, who we've already sort of covered.
Mhm.
The Rose period, we've met her, right? But I want to kind of reintroduce her because we're going to move the I guess the timeline forward through the women. She was born in 1881, the same year as Pablo. We already know her real name was Amelie Lang. She had married a brutal man, etc. She met Pablo in the summer of 1904. One evening during a big storm, they bumped into each other under the little entrance porch. She took refuge at his place. Easy little, it started with a tempest, didn't it? A storm.
Mm.
She was simple and spontaneous and far from prudish. Their relationship began with the first storm. She was involved with somebody else, and there were different, amorous liaisons, and then it finally sort of came around. And at this point, Pablo lived in a state of complete destitution, possessing only a simple bed base and an old trunk that served as an armchair. He never forgot these lean years, even when he had a fortune so huge that even he did not know what it was worth. I mean, are you familiar with these stories about like sort of later in life? He would have all his friends to a restaurant. The waiter would bring the bill, and he would get out a napkin or he would get out a piece of paper or something, and he would draw like a dove, a beautiful dove, and he would sign it Picasso, and he would hand it over, and that was the bill paid.
Oh, I
La
hadn't
la
heard that.
la, incredible! It's just incredible. So yeah. He remained a simple and frugal man who used the deprivation he had experienced in the past as a yardstick to measure the requests that he was continually bombarded with. Some people have dared to create from this moderation a legend totally false that Picasso was an avaricious man, but we will return to that. So you can see this biography is dedicated to taking down the bad information
Mm,
about Pablo.
right.
Pablo's an industry. The Picasso industry and the Picasso name, that is a thing. So I'm sure a lot of work and thought went into this. So all right, and then he acknowledges it is difficult to avoid seeing the possessive jealousy that Pablo inflicted on Fernand as a foretaste of his attitude later to my grandmother, Marie Therese. Um, it is also hard to avoid thinking of the time that Pablo suggested to Francois Gillot that she live hidden away permanently in the little apartment above his studio. So there's a pattern of behavior of like wanting to
Mm,
capture women, hold them, and not let them go. Very similar to somebody painting something. Now it's captured and it's
mm.
mine. Okay. All right. So moving forward here in the bio, of course, we know about Fernand. Um, in 19 their relationship got became strained, all right, and he
Yeah, I
in 19,
bet.
you think, um yeah, and where is Marie Therese, because we have to get her in here. I
Is
don't
this the
know.
first wife?
No, that the no, hang on. Marie Therese, I just have to make sure we get her in because this is important. um Let me see. I just want to make sure she gets her due because she is the 17-year-old muse who would come to influence, who would have a big influence on his. Okay, she comes later. All
Okay.
right. Yeah, much later. She's she's in grade school at this point. All right. Okay, fine.
Oh.
Yeah, living large here. Okay, good. So, so she leaves him. It's 1912. She leaves him. Decades later, Fernand published memoirs about her life with Picasso, revealing
Hmm.
intimate details. This seems to be a pattern. Um, by then, Picasso was world famous and protective of his image. He actually paid Fernand a stipend to stop publishing more of her memoirs until after their
Wow.
deaths. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, in any case, very heavy. Um, Almost immediately after Fernand, Picasso fell passionately in love with a woman he called Eva. Her real name was Marcel Humbert, but Picasso always referred to as Eva Goel. He met her around 1911, 1912, while still entangled with Fernand. This is a pattern that would repeat. Um,
Hmm.
Eva was a fair, light-haired young woman, gentle and a bit fragile. Picasso was smitten. During his Cubist phase, he even inserted lovey-dovey secret messages to her in his paintings. For example, in 1912, the Cubist work "Woman with a Guitar," "Ma Jolie," the phrase "Ma Jolie," the "My Pretty One," is painted on the canvas, which was a reference to Eva as well as a popular song.
Hmm.
He also painted the words "I love Eva" into some pieces. Their romance was cut short. Eva fell ill, likely with tuberculosis or perhaps cancer, and he cared for her. She died in 1915, devastating Picasso knew. Um, he painted more somber works again. I mean, not only did this happen, but then we're dealing with World War One, right?
Yeah.
Um, but of course, Pablo being Pablo, he doesn't stay alone for very long. All right, so he meets
Well,
another
I
woman.
guess it's
Yeah,
nice that he cared for the sick woman. It could have been worse.
yeah. It's not. I mean, he's not all bad. I mean, he's not a complete absolute monster. I mean, he has enough charisma to sort of like attract women and keep them.
Yeah.
And women are attracted to talented manlets. I mean, women are really attracted to talent. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, I don't know, Abby. You are the resident lady. Is that fair to say? I mean, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I know. Yeah.
yes. I think yeah, I think talent can be an attractor, but I don't think it's a keeper. The keeper would be consistency.
You need to be consistently talented here, fellas. You heard this.
Yeah,
Manlet's
people
on the
have
way
got to
up.
stop misinterpreting consistency.
Abby's digging herself a hole again. Here we go. And I feel bad because I'm like, I do this thing on these episodes now where I'm like, as the resident woman, Abby, what do all women think? And it's like, yeah, you got to get me back at some point, Kevin is a resident, whatever.
Biding my
So,
time.
oh yeah, I deserve all of it and more. So in any event, I've got an article here from something called Big Think, and it's how World War One changed Picasso. All right, so just a little
Mhm.
bit because this is a big event, right? Everybody's off to war.
Mm.
It was a horrible, horrible war. As a citizen of neutral Spain, Picasso didn't fight in the war. He did, however, watch his French friends go off to war and spent the war years in Paris. He was already a prominent artist. He stood outside of mainstream society, but couldn't escape the influence of France, war-torn France. And they did this is all about an exposition they did, about his work during the Great War. So a little bit here. When the geopolitical dominoes fell after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Picasso's name was synonymous with modern art, specifically Cubism. He was already famous. Ever resistant to labels, Picasso continually pushed the envelope, creatively experimenting his way from one style to the next. Um, his push accelerated as the Parisian home front around him began associating Cubism and other modern movements with the enemy. All right. Disparagingly referred to as Boche or Bochet, I don't know. Cubism was identified with the German enemy and perceived as unpatriotic. This
Oh,
fellow, the curator, writes. And I find that so strange. He never saw the battlefield, but Picasso needed to battle misinterpretations of his art. I don't understand how that could be, but maybe the Germans just picked it up, or it was just a style that wasn't considered very French for whatever reason. And I don't quite know.
Germans had German expressionism, which was very angular. Maybe the geometric shapes in it were similar, but I don't know when German Expressionism was. I think it might have been after this period of time. I'm just gonna have a look and see when
Yeah,
that came about.
have a peek, but that surprises me. Okay, all right. There's a little bit about it. Okay, good. So let's see here. Um, as Eva's, if you find it, something, Abby, just jump in. As Eva's health worsened in 1915, Picasso had a brief, somewhat secret liaison with Gabby Depere, nicknamed Gabby La Catalane. She was a cabaret dancer and singer in Paris. And he was
So
introduced to
they,
her. Yeah, go on.
you go ahead.
Well, he was introduced to her while Eva was in the hospital.
Oh,
So we can't even have
I
that.
praised him too quickly.
I mean, listen, she's in the hospital. She's got one foot out the door already. Abby, do you really think she's gonna grudge Pablo a little fling? I don't know. With a
Yeah.
cabaret, yeah, who knows? Go on.
So German Expressionism had Kirchner and Kandinsky, and the style was maybe a little. It's all very like modern art looking. It's kind of you could compare it also to Matisse, but I'm looking at a picture on the Tate website of a painting by Carl Schmidt Rottluff. You can you can have words about my pronunciation there, but it looks kind of cubist.
Right. So there's just something about this where it's like these angular lines. It's not
Mm.
warm and soft and beachy and French.
Yeah,
It's too German. It's too stiff and angular and Prussian and and I could sort of
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
see that. I don't know. It's like these are weird stereotypes too. I mean, because the French will burn a city down if they don't get a 4 day week out of it. I mean, but these bigotries and these attitudes are very difficult to pin down. In any
Mm.
case, let's see. He spends time with this Gabby woman. The affair was kept discreet. He never publicized it. We only learned about it decades later when her family sold sketches Picasso had given her. Apparently, he proposed marriage to her, but she refused him.
Hmm.
She instead married another artist in 1917. Um, and she has the distinction of perhaps being she's one of the only women who walked away before he
Right.
was done with him. Even Francois Gillot he was kind of at the end of his rope, and she just took the initiative, before being, humiliated further. We'll get to it.
So
All right.
they're in the goddess category.
All right. Yeah. Right. Well, sometimes a woman is a goddess and a doormat. I have no doubt that they could be both in Pablo's
They
brain.
they they crept into doormat and didn't like it there,
That's
and
right.
got
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. That's not good. All right, so we're coming to the first wife, and this is Olga Kokovla. But it's a great Spanish name. He's going to be right at home with this, I'm sure. So who could this be? All right. At the beginning of 1917, Jean Cocteau, friend of the pod, persuaded Pablo to work on the set for Parade, his one-act ballet. He wanted to bring together the most prominent artists of the times on this project, and he brings them all together, right, including a
Mhm.
Russian ballet troupe. And Picasso did the set, drop curtains, costumes, and all of that.
Oh, is
This
this
was
the same Russian ballet troupe that Chanel did the costumes for?
I think it may be. It's entirely possible. I mean,
Le,
these are
Le Ballet Russes.
That's it. That's it. It's a very small world. There are, as we say on Art of Darkness, there are only 25 to 50,000 people alive at any given time, and everyone else is an NPC. And if you're listening to Art of Darkness, you are among the living. I promise. All right. Congratulations. You made it. You are one of the main characters now, just by listening to this episode. I'm laying hands on the audience. You can't see it if you're listening, but if you're on YouTube, you can see I'm laying hands on the audience and affirming your existence as real beings you were ensouled at birth or at conception. Okay. You exist, I promise. In any event, small world. And so it's talking about Olga. She's a ballet dancer, and Picasso goes to Rome to see the dancers, and he makes the acquaintance of a 26-year-old dancer named Olga. She was not new to the theater world. She'd been in the ballet since 1911, or with the, yeah. At the age of 20, she was the daughter of a colonel in the Imperial Russian military. Um, she had been trained in private in St. Petersburg at a studio of a respected ballet master. But this was her first professional position.
Mm,
She never became a prima ballerina, but she wasn't a hack. She wasn't just filling space. She was talented.
mm.
Okay. One biographer introduces Olga in a particularly violent way. Oh, and this is the thing running cover again, right? Um,
Right.
right. Nobody has since sought to correct this vitriolic description of the woman Pablo fell in love with. She had left home at 21 to join the ballet and devote herself to dancing. Her talent was too small to compensate for the fact that, by ballet standards, she had started too late. But Diaghilev liked to include in his company girls from a higher social class, even if they were not very good at dancing. Olga was, above all, average, an average ballerina, an average beauty, and average intelligence, with average ambitions to marry and settle down. For Picasso, who had tried prostitutes, bisexual models, flamboyant bohemians, tubercular beauties, and black girls from Martinique, Olga was so conventional in every way as to be positively exotic. And he's running cover and saying that is not fair to Olga. Okay, so in any case, there's a little like Rashomon thing going on here. Who is what, and all these nasty comments, and it's just hard to say. Um, but he followed the troupe to Paris, Madrid, and Barcelona, where he presented Olga to his mother. Right now, he and Olga are a thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, and let's see here. Yeah, in biography after biography, the reservations about Olga mount up, offering a caricature of the young woman. Nobody in Pablo's love life has caused so much controversy. Um, because later it would get really nasty, right? So, all right. And his mother advised Olga not to marry her son. And here's what his own mother, who we've not spent much time on, had to say about Pablo.
When your
You ready?
mother is your all.
I do not think that any woman could be happy with him. And the grandmother warned her son that on no account should he marry this woman. And then the dancing master, Diaghilev or whatever, for his part, told Pablo, she's Russian, marry her. Little ethnic pride there. Okay, so he's seducing Olga, and that's a little introduction to her. Let's keep this party rolling. Um, yeah,
It's not often
fun,
that
right?
your future mother-in-law tries
Yeah,
to discourage you for your own good,
right. Yeah, I
rather
don't think.
than
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not a you're taking my son away from me type thing. It's a like run for your life.
I don't think any woman could be happy with him. She was 26, he was 36. She was upper class, refined, and brought Picasso into new social circles. So you can see maybe where there's some appeal there.
Right. Hmm.
They met in 1917. They married in July of 1918 in Paris. It was a high society wedding. He wore a mourning coat with Jean Cocteau as a witness. After years
Hmm.
of bohemian poverty, Picasso suddenly found himself living a more bourgeois life with Olga. They had a luxury apartment, went to dinner parties, mingled with the wealthy. Um, in 1921, Olga gave birth to their son, Paolo. Picasso initially was happy. He painted tender maternal scenes and portraits of Olga and baby Paolo. In fact, the early 1920s saw his style shift to a revived classicism, elegant volumetric figures reminiscent of Ingres or Raphael, which we can recognize. The
Hmm.
neoclassical period from 1918 to 1925 is exemplified by works like Mother and Child or Three Women at the Spring, showing strong, statuesque figures, perhaps influenced by Olga's classical beauty and Picasso's desire for stability after war. I have another painting for you to look at. I
Oh,
think, Abby, let's find another one. This is actually about Olga, but let's find one of these. Picasso, Mother and Child. Let's see if we can find an example from this period because I think these are so helpful to understand his development. And oh, wow, yeah. Let's see, which one is this? This must not be from the blue period. Let me see. It's 1921, Mother and Child. There it is. So it's
yes.
PabloPicasso.org. Abby, give us a little
Yes.
give us a little coverage of this. Read a little bit about this and describe it, please. You're doing
Oh,
me a
so
favor.
what
Thank you.
what is the website?
Yeah, it's
Because I
easy.
think I'm
It's
looking
just
at a different one.
yeah, you
Um,
might be looking at it. It's just look up pablopicasso.org, mother and child. You can't miss it. I'll put it in the chat too.
okay.
And if you want to play
Uh,
along at home, you can look it up. It's just
yeah.
you could just look up Picasso 1921 Mother and Child. It's worth looking at because it's very striking. It's like he's returning from Cubism and kind of like going back to an older style, bringing in some of the maybe the things he.
It's an interactive episode.
Yeah, it is. It's
Oh
good.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you got it.
This
All
is
right, Abby.
this is very much an oil on canvas uh quite classical painting. Again, it looks almost Byzantinian. You've got the mother in very soft flowing dress with a very like she looks almost Italian or Grecian, the way she's got her hair up, and the baby is sort of being lovingly cradled and is lying in her lap looking up at her and raising his hand to her. It was painted in 1921. Picasso painted the large-scale mother and child, possibly in response to the recent birth of his son Paolo. However, the work is also typical of Picasso's post-First World War neoclassicism style of painting. Here, the artist gives the figures monumental form, the sheer weightiness recalling the sculpturally inspired figures in his two nudes of 1906. In contrast to the chromatic explosion of his pre-war Cubist works, Picasso here has returned to the relatively muted palette of pale blues and whites, which accentuate the warm flesh tones of the figures. Compositionally, all is reduced to verticals and horizontals. The background consists simply of three bands of color to suggest sky, sea, and foreground, a factor echoed in the strictly geometrical forms of the mother. Even the right thigh, which should otherwise run at a 45-degree angle, is made horizontal to reinforce the sense of careful balance and order in the composition. However, Picasso introduces one element to disrupt this rigid order, the small child wriggling restlessly in his mother's lap, introducing a sense of movement into this otherwise static image. And that it
Yeah,
does.
yeah, it's a beautiful painting, and
Mm,
it's still kind of shocking and interesting. And, it'd be fascinating to see. And it's amazing
yeah.
that one dude did all of this. He must have been moving fast and
Mm.
working relentlessly. Yeah, cool. Thank
The
you, Abby.
um the expression on her face as well is sort of a mixture of she looks a little bit tired and she looks a little bit in disbelief at this thing wriggling in her in her lap, but also loving at the same time. It's it's like it's not it's a kind of blank expression, but at the same time captures many different emotions.
Yeah, he's. I mean, at this point, he's undisputedly a master,
Mm,
and he's not releasing anything that isn't a masterpiece or adjacent. Has some ideas in it that are worthy. And it feels beautiful and strange, and it's like the baby is kind of emerging almost out of the mother. There's a lot
mm.
of motion and energy to it, and very beautiful. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Abby. Good. All right. So, what do we think is happening now? Headline: Marital strife. One. And we're just gonna be starting to get into the Gillot book here now, which I love
Mm.
her voice. I love her voice. So it's gonna be great. I can't wait to read some of that to you all. All right. By the mid 1920s, the marriage soured. Picasso grew restless and started cheating on Olga.
Oh,
He found domestic life suffocating. Olga, for her part, struggled with his bohemian friends and his mood swings. After the baby's birth, their relationship deteriorated. Olga wanted an aristocratic social life.
mhm.
Picasso wanted freedom to follow his muse in the world's largest euphemism. Uh, he had to follow his muse, okay, and other women. naturally. So let's see here. I have, and this is from, again, Gillot, who is a lover who we will meet later, but she is recounting. She spent a lot of time with Pablo and she had
Mm.
the inside skinny, the dirt. Um, let's see. Ah, okay. I could see from the way he spoke of their beginnings that Pablo had thought this well-born young woman would make a very effective partner in a social stratum a good deal higher than the one he had occupied until then. They were married in the usual civil ceremony and also as a concession to Olga at the Russian church in town in Paris, wearing crowns on their heads in the customary Orthodox ritual. According to Pablo, Olga didn't have the sacred fire of her art. She knew nothing about painting or about much else for that matter, he told me. She married thinking she was going to lead a soft, pampered, upper crust life. Pablo figured he would continue to lead the life of a bohem, on a loftier, grander scale, to be sure, but still remain independent. He told me that when he went to Barcelona with Olga before their marriage and introduced her to his mother had said, "There you go, you poor girl, you don't know what you're letting yourself in for. If I were a friend, I would tell you not to do it under any conditions. I don't believe any woman could be happy with my son. He's available for himself, but for no one else."
Mm.
Later, Olga tried to enlist Pablo's family's help in convincing him to lead a more normal, that is, more bourgeois way of life, which I assume means some sort of monogamy. She had one idea in her head, not 20, and she was capable of repeating that one idea until something happened. One of the let's see here. Yeah, one of his dealers found them an apartment where they moved in, and he began to work in a large room in the apartment, but it had none of the advantages of a real studio, since he found it very inconvenient. And also, as he told me, almost from the start, he and Olga did not get along. He rented an apartment on the seventh floor, just above theirs, and turned it into a suite of atelier. So he rents another apartment above, and now it's a studio. Um, so yeah, let's. This is fun. A little more. Her social ambitions, Olga's, made increasingly greater demands on his time. In 1921, their son Paolo was born, and then began his period of what the French call le high life. Wow, I nailed that one. Le high life, with nurse, chambermaid, cook, chauffeur, and all the rest. Expensive and at the same time distracting. I think there's an anecdote too where I think it might have been Picasso who was like, he was in his life he never drove because he was always ever too poor to drive or too rich. He jumped
Right.
that whole middle ground. Yeah.
Yeah,
In
she
spring,
wanted to go to dinners and have rich friends and have like families, their kids play with each other and all of that. And
and he's the high status artist genius, lots
Mhm.
of money, and brings me, into worldly Paris. And what an unconventional marriage we have. I'm a dancer, he's a
Yeah.
painter, and and he's a genius, and I am I understand the arts, and I can have beautiful children with this wonderful man, and it will all work out. And he's a man. Of course, he'll just come around. He will finally fold to my domestic trap. I think many women,
And and this
yeah.
is why people who want these sorts of things should not go after talent, men or women.
All
You
right.
can't put the bird in the cage.
You cannot put the bird in the cage, and you cannot build the cage around the bird. All right.
Hmm.
In spring and summer, they traveled, Monte Carlo, etc. Pablo found himself more and more involved with fancy dress balls, masquerades, and all the other hijinks of the 1920s, often in company with Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald, next door neighbors to me here in
Casually.
beautiful, yeah, St. Paul, Minnesota. Yeah. The Gerald Murphys, the Count and Countess Etienne de Beaumont, and other international birds of paradise. Okay, fine. So this is, of course, not going to end well. It almost
Yep.
certainly can't. And uh, let's see here. This is where he meets Marie Therese, who I was talking about earlier.
Hmm.
Before we get into her, I want to talk about the symbolism of the Harlequin for Picasso. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, just because I think it's a good pause. There's a painting you can look up. We're not gonna look at it at length here, but it's called Harlequin, and it's a 1927 painting, and it's kind of very abstract and geometric and hard to pin down. And it says, this is from the Met. The presence of Harlequin in this enigmatic picture, signaled by the bicorn hat, and the lozenges at lower right, identifies this work as a self-portrait. For Harlequin was the artist's known alter ego. At the left margin, Picasso painted the shadow of his own profile as if he were observing the disorientation of Harlequin and, by extension, himself. When he painted the picture, Picasso felt he was trapped in a failed marriage, the victim of his mentally unstable wife, Olga Koklova. He had already met the young woman who had become his lover, Marie Therese Walter, age 17. And let me get out the reel because I've got a page marked. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything fun. Well, it just introduces her. Okay, so um, we'll wrap up the Harlequin business, but I want you to know about this. For Picasso, the Harlequin symbolized his own artistic identity and his role as a creator, reshaping and redefining form. The Harlequin, a character from the Commedia dell'arte, was repeatedly reinterpreted by Picasso and became a central figure in his work during the period between 1916 and 1924. He also identified with the Harlequin as an alter ego, particularly during times of personal turmoil, such as a failing marriage. So it's almost like a personal kind of totem or symbol. It's like this is me. I'm this shape-shifting, clownish kind of figure, and
Mm.
nobody understands me or can possibly understand me. And I'm always moving, and you can't pin me down. It's this little kind of personal thing in his own sort of self mythology. All right, and we meet Marie Therese. She was, and this is from the favorable bio. She was unquestionably the person who reawakened Pablo's creative power. That's one way of saying it. She also
Well,
reawakened
and
Pablo.
isn't he the grandson of this woman?
I think it might be the case. Yeah, I'd have to look
Okay.
again at the. Yeah, that would probably be. You're right to point out that bias, are you not? Yeah. Let's just double check and get it right. I want to get it right. Marie Therese
This Harlequin
Picasso.
painting is bizarre.
Isn't it? It's very interesting. Let's see what her children are. Maya, Widmeyer, Picasso. So yes, and then this would be uh, three children, but this fellow's named Olivier Widmeyer Picasso. So yes, that must be it. Okay, good call, Abby. Um, I remember getting into this and going, "This is too. I can't track all the children. I can't track who's who. I just can't. I can't do it. I just gave up at a certain point. I'm just going to do the show.
Get out your
Um,
little bookmark.
I have the little bookmark right here, but it's just like it's so dizzying and disorienting, and I don't know. Anyway, um, so on Saturday, January 8th, 1927, in the late afternoon, Pablo saw a young woman through the window of the Galerie Lafayette. He followed her with his eyes, waited for her to come out, and went up to her with a big smile. Mademoiselle, you have an interesting face. I would like to paint your portrait. He added, I have a feeling that we will accomplish great things together. I am Picasso, he said by way of introduction, pointing to a large book in Chinese or Japanese in which he was featured. I would like to see you again. Meet me on Monday at 11 at Saint Lazare metro station. Marie Therese Walter, my future grandmother, had just met the man of her life. Picasso was reborn. She had no idea who this Picasso was, but she noticed his superb red and black tie, which she would later keep for the rest of her life. In the past, young women did not read the newspapers. The name Picasso did not mean anything to me. It was his tie that interested me, and he charmed me. Um, there you are. And Marie Therese would also keep a small calendar for 1927 in a red leather Hermes folder, accompanied by a lock of Picasso's hair and a self portrait on a small piece of paper, which confirmed the symbolism that he attached to the year 1927. She turned up at the rendezvous. The strange man was there. I went there for no special reason, by chance, because he had a kind smile, she recounted half a century later. He took me to a cafe for lunch, then to his studio. He looked at me, he looked at my figure, he looked at my face, and then I left. He said, come back tomorrow. And after that, it was always tomorrow. I convinced my mother that I was working. Okay. Um, she posed, for him. Um, and even Olga did not go up to that apartment. Um, she said I avoided looking, but they were all such a mess. And yes, so there you go. So now he starts to seduce her, and then she becomes his main muse here now, and they would eventually have children together, obviously, because that book is from one of the grandchildren. All right. Um, and she was a 17-year-old girl, by some accounts, 17 and a half, blonde, athletic,
Mhm.
shy, and he was
Yes.
45.
Yeah, I was going to say, what age is he now? 45.
45. It's a little much.
Oh,
I
it
know.
is a
What do you
little
want to
much.
say it? Just say it at.
I mean, I don't really have anything to say. It's
You could say,
disappointing.
yeah, I mean, you could say different time, but I mean, it's also just kind of like, okay, what are we doing here? You're married. What are you doing? Okay. And he has this
I
excuse and
mean,
he's
if we're
got,
having to convince our mother that we're working, we know that
right.
there's, yeah.
Yeah. We're maybe,
If you were to say, "Hey, mum, this 45-year-old very charming man who is a painter approached me in the middle of a shop and said, 'Come to my apartment so I can paint you. We'll do great things together.'" Your mother is probably not going to look favorably on that,
no
depending
doubt.
on who she is.
Right.
She might read the
And
newspaper. Who knows?
yeah. Well, he kept her hidden for years and he installed her
Oh,
in
of
an
course.
apartment near his
Oh my
studio.
God.
Yeah. She was the embodiment of his ideal of the blonde goddess. And he would make, he created paintings. He did a series of sleeping nude figures, often painted in bright saturated colors,
Hmm.
and they're portraits of her in abstract form. Nude woman in a red chair or girl before a mirror, 1932. She appears in drawings, etc. Um, their relationship was, at least initially, loving and physically passionate. She was sporty and vivacious, enjoyed swimming and cycling, and he admired that about her. And I'm going to now read about his obsession with the Minotaur. So we have the Harlequin and we have
Okay.
the Minotaur. And then I'm going to read the next big event that happens, which is quite disruptive. Okay.
Hmm.
He had an obsession with the Minotaur that lasted decades. All right. He was fascinated by the monstrous half man, half bull Minotaur of Greek mythology. So much so, the character becomes a recurring feature in his art from the 1920s all the way to the 1950s, appearing in around 70 different artworks. So, what could we possibly think the Minotaur might have to say to someone of Pablo Picasso's predilection? It is a man, it is a beast, it is a beast man, okay? And he saw
Hmm.
many aspects of himself in the Minotaur.
I actually do recall either watching something or reading something where he sort of saw the Minotaur as like a representation of himself, similar
There,
to the Harlequin. So from the Harlequin to the Minotaur,
we've got a show title. It's Pablo
he was
Picasso, the Harlequin, and the Minotaur. Yeah, go on.
he was telling us all we needed to know about him in those
Right.
two symbols.
When someone tells you who they are, believe them.
Believe them.
Yes, and so he likened the Minotaur's bull qualities to the bullfighting of his native
Hmm.
Spain. He had made when he was young an obsessive series of drawings that featured the matadors and bulls, and he came back to that as an adult, and he would sometimes include the Minotaur as a symbol of man versus beast. He saw aspects of his own character in the Minotaur. He likened the Minotaur's raging masculinity and physical strength to his own virile qualities. Um,
Hmm.
he was, of course, known for being an incorrigible womanizer. And there you go. So he had an obsession with the Minotaur. You can go and look at various Minotaur paintings. There's a 1936 one that's very striking called Minotaur with Dead Man in Front of a Cave. So, and this is right from the period that we're in right now. So I just think that's fascinating because here's what happens next. In 1935, Marie Therese becomes pregnant with his child,
Yeah.
which forced a crisis. Olga found out and left Picasso, taking Paolo with her. In September of 1935, Marie Therese gave birth to Maya, Maria de la Concepcion Picasso, Picasso's daughter.
Hmm.
Picasso was proud of Maya. He made sweet drawings of her, but notably, he did not marry Marie Therese.
Mm.
She remained a mistress, hopeful that one day Picasso would formalize their family. Um, but and what do you think happens next? His eye was already wandering to a new fascination, another mistress, Dora Maar. Okay, so by 1935, he separated from his wife, though they remained legally married until Olga's death in 1955. Olga just would
Oh,
they would just not grant him the divorce. It was a scandalous. She just would not release him, and there were various laws and things. Or wait,
what
no, I
Russian
take it. I take it back.
Orthodoxy?
I take it back. It's the other way around. It was Picasso. Picasso refused to let
Oh,
her
he's
divorce him.
Catholic.
Yeah, I don't know why exactly. I mean, it sounds like they weren't really married in the Catholic Church, so who knows? In any event,
Right.
she she did attempt to divorce him when she discovered one of his affairs, but he refused it under. Here's why. I should have remembered this. This is so obvious. Why do you think? Because it would mean splitting his assets 50%. And if I forgot that, it's because I just can't imagine being that much of a bastard.
How did we not think of that? It's definitely not because of his devotion to Catholicism.
To the one true faith. Yeah. No. You're not getting half of my stuff. He would not part with his work or his wealth. So Olga
Right. I mean,
lives.
he wouldn't even pay for a meal at a restaurant, so
Yep. Absolutely. So Olga would live in the south of France, and their son Paolo remained attached to Picasso, but Picasso was not a great father. And we're going to
mm-mm.
talk about that more in the After Dark. Marie Therese had a relationship with him until around 1940, but Picasso grew distant. Um, she's often described as gentle and yielding. She deeply loved Picasso and perhaps was the most unconflicted love he had, but even her story does not end
I
happily.
mean, she was so young.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, we're going to meet the next woman here now because these are all
Hmm.
very important, both to his style and then, of course, to his personal life. And this is Dora Maar. At the end of 1935, Picasso was introduced to a young photographer named Dora Maar, of Yugoslav origin on her father's side, French by her mother. She had lived for much of her life in Argentina and spoke Spanish. She had learned about filmmaking and photography, and she had taken part in surrealist events. Stormy by nature, she was an intellectual, a modern, independent woman who fascinated him long before she attracted him. She was very different from Olga and Marie Therese. So there you are. He meets her, and he and she's very involved in politics too, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Mm.
Um, and Dora at the Cafe Les Deux Maggots, Magot, or whatever. The famous first encounter, Dora was doing a party trick, stabbing a knife between her spread fingers onto the table,
Oh, wow.
all alien and whatever. Occasionally nicking herself, her gloved hand bleeding. Picasso was entranced by this dark performative beauty. She was 29, beautiful, intellectually fierce, and very unlike Marie Therese. She was an artist of her own. She had her own career. She had intellect and emotional depth, and but the relationship was not gentle. With Marie Therese, it was gentle, and he said Dora was the weeping woman, full of nightmarish emotion, and he treated her very cruelly. He pitted Dora and Marie Therese against each other, um, once even making them meet, perhaps perversely enjoying the jealousy. According to accounts,
Hmm.
Marie Therese at one point challenged Dora to a fight over Picasso.
Oh my
Picasso
gosh.
supposedly remarked, I have never met a woman who didn't enjoy being beaten. A horrifying comment if true. Okay, we don't know if that's true, but at this point, I don't know. I'm willing to think maybe it might have been.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, yeah,
balanced. I'm gonna say it was probably true. Where
yeah,
where did you
yeah.
say where did you say that Dora was from?
Well, she's her Yugoslav on her father's side, French on her mother's, and then
So
Argentina. So she spoke Spanish.
Mar
Yeah,
the artist Marina Abramovic is, I think, Yugoslav as well, and she's a performance artist, still alive, and one of her performance art pieces was to do that knife thing, and I wonder if they just do that out there.
they just do that. That's a party trick you learn when you go camping, as a
Yeah,
teenager.
just
Hmm.
knock back some vodka and
and
play with
and
some knives.
feel no pain, feel
Yeah.
no pain whatsoever. I have a couple of paintings to bring to you, Abby.
Hmm.
Um, by way of we're going to be coming into the home stretch here. I promise. I think we're like 3 hours in. We're into hour four. I
We're
hope
not
you're having
doing
a
too
good
bad.
time. No, I
I
feel
am.
pretty good about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel good. So let's go into a little bit about her, and here is a header: Muse of Anguish. Fun. She became the primary muse during his surrealist phase. She's immortalized in dozens of paintings, often depicted in tears or deep emotion. The most famous being The Weeping Woman, 1937. and there's a series, and this is what sets up Guernica. Abby, can you find The Weeping Woman 1937?
Yes.
All right. What website are you
Um,
on?
I'm
Ah,
on
Pab
the Tate.
the Tate. Okay,
Uh,
good. There's also pablopicasso.org, but does the Tate have some good copy about it, do you think? Yeah.
it has a little bit of copy. It's not
Okay.
a huge amount of copy.
Well, maybe. Okay.
So
Yeah, go ahead. Go with it.
okay. Um, the Tate says Weeping Woman, 1937, Pablo Picasso. Weeping Woman is based on an image of a woman holding her dead child. It is taken from Picasso's anti-war mural, Guernica. Picasso painted both works during the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939. It was in response to the bombing of the Basque town of Guernica. The attack was carried out in April 1937 by Nazi Germany's Air Force in support of Spain's nationalist forces. Hundreds of people were killed. The figure of the weeping woman is based on an artist and photographer, Dora Maar. Maar photographed Picasso's making of Guernica. And the painting itself is very much a return to the Cubist type of forms, lots of different colors, lots of angles, lots of emotion. She's in like quite a bit of anguish, wearing a very fancy red hat with a little like blue flower on it. I was reading some things about Guernica, and they had said that the Spanish nationalist forces, no, yeah, the Spanish Republican forces had had commissioned Picasso to do a painting for the World Fair, and he had initially rejected this commission because he saw himself as being very like non-political, and he didn't want to come down on a particular side. And then there was the bombing of Guernica that happened, and all of these very distressing images had come out in the media on in newspapers and such about this bombing, and that's when he decided that he would do the painting.
Yeah, I think it's maybe not that cut and dry, but we're arriving at that very important
Mm,
event in history. And then, of course, um, Picasso, as a Spanish artist living in France, I mean, he had to say something. I mean, there had to be
yeah.
something. And this gets into Dora, so I want to get a
Well,
quote
in
from the book. Yeah,
this just one study, Weeping Women is in color, and Guernica itself is black and white, so
right.
obviously separate pieces,
Yeah, I'm not sure it's black and white, but it's like
isn't it?
not very colorful. But yeah, yeah, we'll look at it. It may be. Okay, so this is important. Yeah. International events in the 1930s in Spain, then throughout Europe, left a deep scar on Picasso. Pablo the pacifist, the man of the left, could not bear to see Spain fall into fascist hands. In 1932, he signed the Protest Against Aragon's Conviction for Incitement to Murder for Reasons of Anarchist Propaganda, following the publication of Front Rouge. I mean, he definitely sided with the communists.
Hmm.
In April 1935, as attested in a letter to the editors of the newspaper Le Monde, he sent a telegram to Hitler asking him to spare the lives of Albert Kaiser and Rudolf Claus, two German anti-fascists condemned to death. All the same, he lived for his art. The circles he moved in were primarily intellectual and artistic, concerned with literature, painting, sculpture, music, and dance. He was above all bound up in his own pictorial research. Day to day, Pablo and his contemporaries lived through events that, with hindsight, we can see more clearly. At the time, it was hard for them to distinguish propaganda from reality, as unbiased information was hard to come by. Wow, so glad things have changed. Pablo's political idealism confronted chillingly ruthless forces whose weapons were to include unparalleled acts of violence. So the Spanish Civil War led Pablo to adopt a clearer position. His nomination as director of the Prado on September 19th, 1936 was proof positive of the Spanish Republicans' interest in his work and its impact. Picasso served as a bona fide. Of course, this too was a maneuver, the full import of which escaped Pablo. Just as he had little inkling of his own importance generally, intellectuals and artists were also weapons, pawns in the political debate. So this is all happening, and he's sort of taking a stand against Franco, and then this leads up to the business
Mm.
with Guernica, which we're going to get into. All right. And it was this Dora woman who was very political, apparently, and
Mm.
she was an anti-fascist activist. She influenced his political awareness, um, and some people say it was sort of her influence that may have even helped uh, influence Picasso to be more active, and that apparently she may have even helped paint sections of Guernica, reportedly painting the tiny lines on the dying horse's body.
Mm.
So, yeah. Um, she documented the process of Guernica, taking photographs of the mural's stages. So, of course, everybody knows about Guernica. Um, I think you're right, Abby. It does appear to be black and white. Yeah, for some reason, I don't know. I was confusing it with some of with like the palette of the Cubist period.
Right.
Yeah, that very. Anyway,
There was
um,
something I was watching that had said that potentially it was in black and white because all the images coming out of Guernica at the time in the media would have been in black and white.
right,
So that's how he would have seen it. And then he
right,
interpreted that way.
right. I mean, and
Although
so
it's
really,
not a direct interpretation of what happened, it's
right,
a little more general. But
right. Well, and so just to give people background who maybe don't know, the Spanish Civil War was kind of a proxy war, a setup for
Mhm.
World War II, where it was the communist forces versus the fascist forces, the leftists versus the rightists in Spain, and both sides committed very serious atrocities. And one of the major atrocities committed by the right was the bombing of Guernica. Which was on the 26th of April, 1937. And the nationalists, the right wingers led by Franco, perceived Guernica, a quiet Basque country village in the province of Biscay, um, as a bastion of the Republican resistance movement and the center of Basque culture. And so the Nazi Germany's warplanes bombed Guernica for about 2 hours. They just bombed it to pieces. And it was really shocking, I think, to people. The Times journalist George Steer propelled this event onto the international scene and brought it to Picasso's attention. He published on an eyewitness account. Guernica, the most ancient town of the Basques and the center of their cultural tradition, was completely destroyed yesterday afternoon by insurgent air raiders. The The bombardment of this open town far behind the lines occupied precisely 3 hours and a quarter, during which a powerful fleet of airplanes consisting of three types of German types, Junkers and Heinkel bombers, did not cease unloading on the town, bombs weighing from 1,000 pounds downwards. And it is calculated more than 3,000 two-pounder aluminum incendiary projectiles. The fighters, meanwhile, plunged low from above the center of the town to machine gun those of the civilian population who had taken refuge in the fields. Um, Picasso lived in Paris during its German occupation, World War II. The Chanel episode would be a good counterpart to this. A
Mhm.
widely repeated story is that a German officer saw a photo of Guernica, his painting of this event, in his apartment and asked, "Did you do that?" And Picasso responded, "No, you did." So fun. Um, Yeah, and referring to the painting, art theorist Rudolf Arnheim writes, "The women and children make Guernica the image of innocent, defenseless humanity victimized. Also, women and children have often been presented by Picasso as the very perfection of mankind. An assault on women and children is, in Picasso's view, directed at the core of mankind."
Mm.
So Dorimar helped him. She found a large enough studio for him to paint. Um, the painting was uh, let's see here. It was commissioned. He was living in Paris, of course. He was commissioned by the Spanish Republican government to create a large artwork for the Spanish pavilion at the Exposition of Modern Art. in the 1937 Paris International Exposition. Um, he had last visited Spain in 1934 and would never return, but he was the honorary director in exile of the Prado Museum. All right, so they're using
Mm.
him as kind of an icon of it. Um, he worked kind of dispassionately from January until April. Didn't really know what he was going to do. It was yeah, he didn't know what he was going to do. And then upon hearing the reports of the bombing, a poet friend, Juan Leria, visited him to urge him to make the bombing his subject, and that he read the eyewitness account, and the rest is kind of history. My understanding of Guernica too is that it wasn't initially kind of received the way we think of it now as just completely iconic a piece. It was sort of
Mm.
baffling to people, but over
I mean,
time,
didn't they end up going with another artist for the actual exhibition?
oh yeah, let me see what ended up happening with that. It was unveiled and initially exhibited in July 1937 at the exhibition where Germany and the Soviet Union had huge pavilions. The pavilion, which was financed by the Spanish Republican government at the time of Civil War, was built to exhibit, the struggle for existence. The pavilion's entrance presented an enormous photographic mural of Republican soldiers accompanied by the slogan, "We are fighting for the essential unity of Spain. We are fighting for the integrity of Spanish soil. We are fighting for the independence of our country and for the right of the Spanish people to determine their own destiny." So no, it was displayed, and it was accompanied by a poem, and then some other sort of paintings that were sympathetic to the Republican cause. And it didn't get much attention. I mean, the
Mm.
public reacted to it kind of like, what? What is this? Some Marxist groups criticized the painting as lacking in political commitment. You're not communist enough. You're not Marxist enough, and faulted it for not offering a vision of a better future. Um, and an art
Oh,
critic,
wow.
criticized it, saying that the painting was jerky and too compressed for its size. And then it had its admirers, but it eventually was used, frankly, as a very serious piece of propaganda, and it was sent around Europe. It
Mm.
was sent to America, and
And
finally was,
it's
yeah.
just one panel, so it had to get rolled up
Wow.
very carefully to send around. It's not multiple panels that you can take apart and fit back together. Like that is a giant work of art. I can't remember how big it is.
It is. Let me find it. I mean, if you don't know Guernica, you have to know it. It's 137 inches by 305 inches. So I don't know what the math is on that, but that is a big. There's the extra inches he was missing. Um, I mean, that is a big sucker. That is how big is this in feet? Let's find out. Um, yeah, I'm not in a state to do math right now. I
Yeah,
podcast. I read history. I do math. It's like 11 and a half feet tall and then 25 and a half feet wide, apparently.
it's
So
huge. I'm looking at a photo now where like five men are carrying it.
yeah, crazy. Um, so yes, you must know Guernica. Abby, do you want to open it up and just sort of like you just rattle off what you're seeing in it? Do you have any thoughts or impressions? Did you try to look at it anew?
I mean, it's just kind of it's quite like abstract depictions of horror. He'd purposely made it non-specific, so it's a general depiction of war, and that's why it continues to be quite relevant today and in other times. I did hear a fact that the light bulb at the top of the painting, there's like in the painting you can see some structures that look like roofs or walls or doors, but it's very non-specific, and there's like dying horses and people and things on the ground. But in the very top of the painting, there's a light bulb that is shining, and someone had said that that might represent the bomb because this Spanish word for light bulb is, I believe, bombilla. So there's a little connection there. Yeah, it's like I haven't seen it in person, but I imagine in person it would be very affecting
Yeah,
to see.
sure.
Uh, and apparently there was a tapestry of it in the UN. And when they were doing when they were debating over the Iraq War, George W. Bush had asked for it to be covered up because he thought it would be too propagandary.
Sure. I wonder if that really happened. Let me see if that's true or it does say, well, I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. Yeah, no, it looks like maybe that is true. A reproduction of the painting was once covered up at the UN. Yep. Yep. The G.W. Bush administration deemed the famous anti-war painting as an inappropriate backdrop for a declaration of war. Oh, irony. Oh dear. Well, he famously demanded that Guernica not return to Spain until democracy was restored. He would not let
Yeah,
Franco, have it. And it was only in 1981 that Guernica was sent back to Spain, where it now resides in Madrid.
it's
Um,
in the Prado, isn't it?
I think so. Where is Guernica now? That would make sense.
Well,
That would,
yeah, the
yeah.
Prado's in Madrid. Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet it's
yeah.
there.
There you go. Yeah. No, I want to know where it is exactly. Boo, boo, boo. That would really be cool to see, wouldn't it? Yeah, it'd be
Hmm.
amazing. Where is it? Let's see. It says it's Museo Reina Sofia, so maybe not.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it is not in the Prado.
wild.
Museo Nacional Centro de Arte Reina Sofia. Okay, good. But it's in
Okay.
Madrid. All right. So yes, good. If you ever go see Guernica, email us. I want to hear about it. You can find us. We have the Discord. Go to artofdarkpod.com. I need to go to Spain. That would be very cool. He never went back to Spain under Franco. And he was symbolic. I mean, he didn't really, people would say his communism was sentimental. He didn't read Marx, but opposing Franco and fascism was a point of pride to him. He remained stateless in France. He never adopted French citizenship. He never returned
Hmm.
to Spain because the country was to him compromised and would have been probably a problem. Although they
Hmm.
may not have been able to mess with him too much. But I mean, it's tricky. And I think it was maybe Gillot who said, the one woman who we're going to hear more from, that it was just sort of quietly brave for him to just stay in Paris throughout the Civil War and throughout uh, the coming conflagration. Um, so there he is, right at the heart of everything. Um, we looked at the Weeping Woman,
Hmm.
and it's really a good example of the sort of his personal life. Intersecting with bigger picture stuff. And emotionally, as we know, he drained Dora. She suffered nervous breakdowns during their relationship. He was domineering and took a sadistic glee in her emotional storms. Later, quoting that Dora liked to suffer, that was her role. He is also quoted as saying, Dora for me was always a weeping woman. By 1943, their relationship disintegrated. Her mental health was shattered. She was treated by psychiatrist Jacques Lacan and withdrew from society for years, living alone with cats. She outlived Picasso. She died in 1997, but never fully recovered from the affair, remaining, as she said, Picasso's shadow. Ouch. Yikes. You work on Guernica, you got this guy, and then she got alpha widowed
And
by
she was
the
so vibrant.
sucked dry, sucked dry to produce the anti-war painting that everyone loves. I just don't know. All
She
right,
traveled down the goddess to doormat pipeline.
right. The famous manlet to goddess to doormat pipeline. Yeah, there's a masterpiece or two in there somewhere. Okay, so this is just a little bit from Gillot, who gets on the scene here, right around this time, of course. And this is her recounting. After the move to La Gauloise, I cannot say that. To I think to the ocean to the south. I tried to keep my thought from dwelling too much on Pablo's other women and their present condition, but it wasn't always easy. There were occasional bulletins from Dora Maar, but on the whole, she seemed rather remote. Olga, too, had been removed from the scene, but her barrage of vituperation continued to show up in the mailbox. Marie Therese was an equally untiring correspondent, but her letters, of course, were written in an entirely different vein from Olga's. Pablo found them gratifying. I didn't. For their holidays, Marie Therese and Maya came to Juan Lapine, less than 10 miles from their house there. And so, in spite of their theoretical and historical distance, they continued to seem very much a part of our life together. Pablo talked often about all my predecessors, and as a result, by the summer of 1949, I had come to understand Marie Therese's role much better than I had when I first went to live with him in May of 1946. And then this goes on to explain what Marie Therese was to Picasso through the through the recounting of Gillot. This is a little more here. Pablo always told me that he had a great deal of affection for Marie Therese and that he didn't care so much for Dora Maar, but she was a very intelligent woman. It wasn't at all that I was so greatly attracted by Dora, he said. I just felt that finally here was somebody I could carry on a conversation with.
Oh God.
Okay. Yeah. So yep. So that's where we're at, and we're coming up to World War II, and I just want to talk a little bit about what he's up to at that time, and then we're going to introduce this new woman. And what is this? Am I on the right page? Here it is. Yeah. So during World War II, he remained in Paris while the Germans occupied the city. Unsurprisingly, his artistic style did not fit the Nazi ideal of art. I
But it's
I
so German.
Yeah, hello, Herr Picasso. I do not see the guitar. Where is the guitar? I do not see the guitar. This is very confusing. Where is
It says
the strong,
guitar.
where's the guitar? It's very kind of funny to think about. He was harassed by the Gestapo. He just retreated into his studio and he did his work. And this is crazy. I did not know this. Around this time, he wrote poetry as an
Oh,
alternative outlet. He wrote more than 300 poems between 1935 and 1959. And
wow.
they're largely untitled except for the date and sometimes where he wrote them. These works were often works were gustatory, erotic, and at times scatological, as were his two full-length plays. He was a playwright.
Oh my God.
Here's one. And, Desire Caught by the Tail, The Four Little Girls, and The Burial of the Count of Orgaz. Okay. And in 1944, after the liberation of Paris, then 63 years old, he began a romantic relationship with Francois Gillot, who was 40 years younger than him. And we're gonna get into this now because she's very important. But I just think it was just fascinating. I want to read some of this poetry, and I'm going to skip this thing that I had cited, but just want to say really quickly that like he was at this point super famous, like
Mhm.
he recognizable in France on the street, famous, okay, and rich. So remember this.
The perfect time to go into poetry.
Well, yes, right, right. Just when you think it can't get worse, you know. Here's his a poem of his. Okay, he's not known for his poetry, right? Um, her great thighs, her breasts, her hips, her buttocks, her arms, her calves, her hands, her eyes, her cheeks, her hair, her nose, her throat, her ears. The planets, the wide curtain drawn, and the transparent sky hidden behind the grill. The oil lamp and the little bells of the canaries, sweet between the figs. The bowl of milk, of feathers snatched from each laugh undressing. The nude removing the weight of the weapons taken from the garden of flowers. So many games, dead man hanging from the branches of the schoolyard, haloed with songs. Lake the lure of blood and thistles, hollyhocks played in the dice, needles of liquid shadow and bouquets of crystal algae open to the dance step of the moving colors, shaken in the bottom of the glass, poured out on the lilac mask dressed with rain. Okay. I don't know. I'm not a poet. I don't know what I'm looking at. I know we don't talk about him as a poet. But
No,
there's some of Pablo's poetry for you. I know that was what you were waiting for. You were dying for that. And we're gonna meet. Francois Gillot here, and I think I'm going to hopefully be able to bring this into the home stretch soon. Gracious me, goodness me, I'll do it. It's going to be good. We're getting there.
We're getting there.
There can only be so many women. Uh, this is the one
When you're
who,
60 and above.
oh my word. At a certain point, they have to start draining your vril. At a certain point, the women start taking your soul stuff away from you. Okay, it happens at some point. Um, but she's the one who left kind of on her own terms. Like,
Mhm.
there was the other one we mentioned, but this is the one who she ended up with children. Da da da. He was kind of done with her, but she definitely was like, "I'm leaving. No, you won't. You won't ever leave me. Watch me." Okay. She did not. She was not intimidated by him. She's a painter in her own right. She came from some money. I think her family wanted her to be a lawyer.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and she was an internationally known artist by the time she died, known for watercolors and ceramics. Her artwork is showcased in more than a dozen leading museums. Um, and her painting Paloma a la Guitar, a 1965 portrait of her daughter, sold for 1.3 million. Now, I don't know how much of this is shaded by that relationship with Picasso. I would say probably not a small amount. However, she does have her own life. She did have
Mhm.
her own talent, and she was a firecracker. And watching some of her interviews are fascinating because it's sort of like she brings Picasso into the room. She knows what people want to hear. She's practiced it all. Very sophisticated, very smart. And in an interview questioning how she came to be with two of the most influential men in the world. So she started with Picasso, and then she eventually married. So she never married Picasso, but she eventually married Jonas Salk, the researcher who developed the polio vaccine.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so Dick's like, what a, okay, interesting. And they asked, somebody asked her, why, how did you end up with like two of the most important men of the century? And she said, lions mate with lions. And
Hey.
there you go. That's one for you, Abby. I feel like, yeah, that's one for you for sure. That's a good one. That's a keeper. Take that, boys, and run with that. All right, everybody, that's good.
I
She
like
just,
that.
I did too. She decided at the age of 5 to become a painter. Okay, and so she meets Picasso. She's 21. He's 61. Picasso first saw her in a restaurant with her friend during the occupation. In 1943, and he saw her. There was, he never forgot it, and she said of her relationship with him. He did not know me well at all. I am very secretive. I smile and I'm polite, but that doesn't mean that I am in agreement or that I will do as I said I would. It's just a screen. He thought I would react like all his other women. That was a completely wrong opinion. I had other ideas. I did not put my narcissism in being represented by him. I couldn't care less. So she was formidable and could sort of stand up to him a little bit. And, they became lovers in 1944.
Mhm.
Um, and, she describes meeting him, in his studio with her friend, and and then sort of, you know, he lured them to his studio, and then is just sort of like, kind of eventually seduced her, and there you go. So, um, so she took the place of Dora Maar, and she moved in with Picasso after the war and was his muse of the late 40s. And she
Mhm.
inspired a more joyful Mediterranean tone in some of his post-war work. Why not?
The
You know,
kind of thing you can put on a postcard.
a little bit, maybe. Yep, yep. Not Guernica. A little more upbeat than Guernica. Um, and they settled in the south of France. And he was wildly famous, very rich. And they never married. He was still technically married to Olga, as we know. He doesn't want
Hmm.
to split the money. They had two children together, Claude Picasso in 1947 and Paloma Picasso. That is wild to be 61 and having children with a 21-year-old woman. That is
Yeah.
wild. I don't know how I'm going to feel when I'm 61, but I am probably going to, I'll be hanging up these spurs, Abby. I will be taking steps so that does not happen. I tell you what, I don't care how much money I have. I don't care how famous I am or I'm not. I just think that's not the most responsible thing to do for the children, never mind anything else. But
No.
hey, Picasso was a good Catholic, right? I mean, as we know, I mean, he's just not unmarried. No, of course not. But they must have wanted children. I mean, they had a great passion. Okay, so here we are.
Hmm.
Um, and his old pattern reemerged. He began an affair with a younger woman, Genevieve Laporte, in the early 1950s, and he could be cruel and belittling. At a certain point, I think he meets Charlie Chaplin. Kind of fun. We can blast by that. And uh, after about 10 years, she grew tired of his abuse and affairs and left him in 1953. This was unprecedented. She was the first woman to voluntarily walk out on Picasso, the first woman this enmeshed, right? He was furious and
It's like,
incredulous.
what?
Right. Yeah, crazy. And I do think I want to read a little more from her here in her great little fun little memoir. That was a scandal. And there's a picture of her just looking, dewy and fresh faced and
Mm.
very much 20 something. And then there he is in his 60s. It is confusing. All right. Um, let's see. Da, da, da. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's She met him one final time, and this is what he sort of said. You were wonderful, he told me. Absolutely sublime. You've got to stay this time. You're the only one I have any fun with. You carry with you the right atmosphere. I'll die from boredom if you go. I told him I knew I would not be able to bear up under our old way of life, and I left that evening. After I had gone, he got into one of his black moods again and couldn't stand being there. He took the children and their nurse and all the others and went to the Pyrenees. There he spent the rest of the summer buzzing around Madame du Letzerme. And I think that was maybe the last time she saw him. And his reaction to all of this, he disowned Claude and Paloma, their children,
Oh, wow.
refusing to recognize them for years because Francois had betrayed him by writing the book. Um,
Uh,
now, but yeah. Now, okay, I want to make sure I have good information here. One moment. Um, but they may have ultimately reconciled. But that's pretty rough. He was really, really, really hurt. So I'm getting mixed information. It says here that maybe he included them in the will, but very famously he does not have a will. But maybe they
right.
saw something out of the estate somehow. It's confusing. And you do not want to have $5 million or $500,000 or $50 million and not have a will. That is a mess. You are leaving
Yeah,
especially
especially
if
when
you've been
you've got
like,
a
yeah,
wife that's not your wife and a bunch of illegitimate children and there's children here and there and probably some would pop out of the woodwork at some point as well because he's had affairs with so many people and you know,
he had no
how do you
pullout game,
divvy that up?
zero pullout game, Picasso. You just go buck wild, did not care. Crazy. Just a different time, I tell you. So, all right. Francois moved on, married Jonas Salk, and lived a long life. Okay. In 1946, he visited an annual pottery fair in Provence
Hmm.
and caught the ceramics bug. He began working, as you do, at the Madura Pottery.
Poetry, playwriting, ceramics.
Yep, yep, 21-year-olds. I mean, at least she's not 17, right?
When did he have the time?
I seriously, I mean, yeah, just a manlet with just unlimited energy. And he transformed. He started working on with ceramics, and he just was not done. He was, he would be bored. He was always making things, always making things, always looking for a new muse or mistress, and always making things.
Mhm.
And the final great love was Jacqueline Roch, whom he met in 1953, just as Francois was leaving. Too easy. It's a revolving door. There's no a 3-year break where he can
There's
get to the
no
bottom. Yeah.
healing.
There's no healing. There's no reflection. There's no regret. There's just movement and frankly, and not pulling out, apparently. We're just going.
It's the
Um,
children who are wrong.
yes, yes, exactly. She was 26 when he was 72, and he
Great.
spotted her at the pottery workshop where he was making ceramics. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. He was taken by her elegant neck and profile. After her divorce, she entered into a relationship with Picasso
They
in his devoted.
inspired the scene for Ghost.
I guess, yeah, no. What was that? Swayze and
It was
Picasso?
Swayze.
I
Yeah.
don't think so, Abby. I think that's a reach. That is a reach. Um,
I'm just thinking of the
yeah.
pottery scene.
No, I like
Yeah.
it. Yeah, no, the very that okay, yeah, yeah. Is that pottery scene? Is that erotic? Is that hot to women or people? Is that something people like?
That was supposed to be a very hot scene, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
going down in cinema history as a,
Cinematic history.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, there is something really erotic about clay.
clay.
Um they um they finally married in 1961 because Olga died. Okay, so now he can
Oh,
remarry. And he must have liked her a lot because he was so worried about 50% of his estate going to this other woman. So in any event, she put up with his moods and protected him, and he worshipped her in his own way. She became the most painted muse of all. And between
oh,
1954 and 1973, it said that he made over 400 portraits of her. Um, and he was the only woman that she was the only woman he painted for the last 17 years of his life, one biographer noted. So there you go. Um, More sculpture. He took up sheet metal sculpture again, made a series of metal busts of Jacqueline, one major piece called Chicago Picasso. Is an enormous 50-foot steel sculpture unveiled in downtown Chicago in
mhm.
1950 or 67. It's an abstracted baboon-like or woman-like form. Chicagoans still debate what it represents, and he donated it as a gift to the city. Um,
Oh, I see.
and
It
yeah,
is quite
he
baboon-like.
yeah. What website are you on here right now? I mean,
I'm just on Google.
you're just on Google. That's fun. The Chicago Picasso. Oh, interesting. Huh. Yeah, I was not familiar with this. I did not know that he had made that. That's very interesting. It's like public art in Chicago. Cool. Um, so there you go. You can see
It's
if you're.
huge.
It is massive. It appears to be
So he
massive.
was a man of over 60 and he made that sculpture?
Apparently, I mean, he may have had, assistants
Assistance.
or whatever,
Yeah.
but I mean, he had an idea, and here we go, and there you go, fun. Um, okay, and we're getting into the late style. We're coming into the home stretch, okay, and
He was
his,
85.
yeah, wild, isn't it?
Hmm.
His late paintings were colorful, very childlike in their freedom sometimes. He revisited the great masters. He painted 58 versions of Velázquez's Las Meninas in 1957. He riffed on Manet's Luncheon on the Grass multiple times. He's just playing with things. Um, and there was, at a certain point, a talk of critical decline in Picasso's work and that the brilliance of his youth and mid-career wasn't sustained to the end.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, you can't sort of be triumphant forever. Uh, and certain people would say that some of the work was strained, if not pathetic, effort, by an artist of failing power to position himself among the old masters. Some celebrated his late work as a triumph of creativity over age, pointing out how prolific and daring he remained. There's a famous photo of Picasso in his 90s, shirtless, working vigorously. He never stopped. In fact, just days before his death, he was painting in his studio. As he aged, Jacqueline also became his gatekeeper. Some say
Mm.
she isolated Picasso, so maybe that's a little bit of comeuppance for his earlier attitude. Although I do find it hard to. Yeah. Um, and we are very close to the end here. Regarding the late work, it's possible that it just simply overwhelmed people. As one writer put it, in the end, there were too many Picassos. Genius is a wearying thing, and finally it exhausts us. Okay.
Mm.
I mean, by the time he was 90, he's like a living legend. He's like a cartoon of
Mm.
himself, right? And, you know, it was retrospectives and the art market boomed for his work and blah blah blah. They say he was arguably the first artist to see his own fame like at that level while he was still alive. An artist like that, a painter, right? Not a pop star, not a musician, not a, you know,
Mm.
it's
Yeah, usually
highly,
it comes
yeah,
after death for painters.
right, right. Just like podcasters. Yeah, podcasters the same way. They only respect us when we're gone, Abby. When we're here, you know. All right, so Uh, we're going to talk about this more in the After Dark, but despite his public confidence, he privately dreaded death. He was superstitious about it. He refused to
Mm.
make a will. believing that preparing for death might bring it sooner. His lawyer,
Oh, just like my
uh,
grandmother.
oh, well, there you are, uh, explained after he died, he never made one because of superstition, a way of avoiding death, one might say. Indeed, Picasso seemed to think he could cheat death by ignoring it. He also avoided doctors and hospitals. In his last years, he would say things like, "I'm not going to die because death doesn't exist." Well, on April 8th, 1973, Picasso died of a heart attack at his farmhouse Notre Dame de Vie in Mougins, France. He was 91. Fittingly and maybe poetically, he had been at a dinner party the night before entertaining guests. There's a story that, as his last toast, he said, "Drink to me, drink to my health. You know I can't drink anymore." Paul McCartney apparently turned that line into a song, Picasso's last words.
Oh,
You know that?
wow.
You know that one? Let's see if we
No,
can
I
find
didn't
it.
know that.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Picasso's last words. Paul McCartney and Wings, 1973. So there you go. Fun, fun, fun. Here is the New York Times obit, 1973. Pablo Picasso, the titan of 20th century art, died this morning at his hilltop villa of Notre Dame de Vie here. He was 91 years old. The death of the Spanish born artist was attributed to pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs, by Dr. Jean Claude Rance, a local physician who was summoned to the 35-room mansion by the family. Dr. Rance said that Picasso had been ill for several weeks. With him when he died was his second wife, the 47-year-old Jacqueline Roque, whom he married in 1961. In the last few years, Picasso rarely left his 17-acre estate, which was surrounded by barbed wire. He had been in exile from his native land since 1939, when Franco defeated the Republican government of Spain in the Three-Year Civil War. About 10 days ago, Picasso was helping to assemble 201 of his paintings for an exhibition at the Avignon Arts Festival, which will open in that city May 23rd at the Palais de Papas. According to Paul Pua, the festival director who had visited the artist at his home on the Riviera above Cannes, these canvases covered the artist's output from October 1970 to the close of 1972. All right. Large crowds thronged to the Picassos at the Museum of Modern Art yesterday. Tourists, museum goers, and television camera crews mingled before Guernica, Harlequin, the card player, and the studio, major works from the Middle Years. The museum put a large vase of flowers in the main lobby, and nearby a strip of cloth with Picasso lettered on it in gold. Guernica drew many to the third floor. "I was a small girl when he did this painting," said Margaret Schneider of Brooklyn. Rose Friedman of Huntington, Long Island, called it haunting. Mia Krogster-Sturen of Stockholm called the reaction at the museum touching. 900 of his early works to Barcelona. These were said to be the best of his output. Earlier in 1963, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just sort of talking about his work and everything. But that's a very beautiful, sort of touching little
Hmm.
moment. And you go, that, I mean, to touch people like that, where they're like, they want to show up at a museum because you passed away
Yeah.
and just like honor your work. It's just this, I don't know if we'll see something like that in our own lifetimes. I mean, at that scale, probably not. Um, so I have a little bit of from the real family story here. We're going all the way to the beginning. Um, uh, After he passed, Jacqueline barred many family members from the funeral, and his death set off a huge legal battle because without a will, settling his estate worth between 100 and 250 million dollars worth of art and assets took 6 years and
I
involved,
bet it did.
yeah, multiple heirs. That actually seems short. Okay,
Hmm.
um, so here we go. Um, and this is from Olivier Widmeyer Picasso. For me, Pablo Picasso was born on April 8th, 1973. Yes, my grandfather was born the day he died. Up until then, he did not exist, either in my dreams or in reality. He existed only on walls, which meant he was very present, but at the same time, very abstract. People talked to me about him from time to time, but I never saw him. At high school, my friends all had grandfathers they often saw on Sundays. I didn't. But strangely, it was not something I missed. They had family photos. I had family portraits of my mother as a child, of my grandmother lost in thought, and painted objects that were called still lifes, even though I didn't really understand how a coffee pot or a piece of bread could be alive or dead. On April 8th, 1973, everything changed. All this still life started to move. And it goes on, and it's about a special news flash. I knew that meant there had to be a catastrophe, a terrorist attack, etc. The painter Pablo Picasso died this morning in his house on the Côte d'Azur at the age of 92. He is regarded as the artist who invented 20th century art. I looked at my mother, who, without saying a word, got up from her armchair and walked quietly, mechanically to the telephone in the next room. She dialed the number of her brother Paulo, who lived in Boigaloupe, a property in Gizor near Paris that I knew. I caught her saying, "Hello, Paulo, it's Maya. Have you heard from Papa?" Paulo replied. She told me afterwards that he had called him the day before and that he had seemed very tired, and that was all. It was clear that Paulo hadn't heard the news. My mother couldn't bring herself to tell him about the news flash. They spoke a bit more and then she hung up. I heard a few days later that he was told the news following a brief phone call from the Côte d'Azur. Paulo came back to Paris and bumped into the concierge of his building at the bottom of the stairs. "Oh, monsieur, your poor papa." Then he left for Orly Airport to catch the plane so that he could go to Mougins, etc. And it sort of goes on and it describes this crazy puzzle piece of all of these details and everything. Um, and if you're interested in that, you can read that book. He was interred at the Chateau Vauvenargues in Provence, where he had owned a property. And obituaries all the world, hailed him as a titan. This was sort of maybe they didn't. It was a different time, of course, even then, and they didn't really know all the nasty details. But even then, it's like, come on,
Mm.
you have to, we have to separate the work from the life to a point, and the work does stand on its own and speak for itself. And if he had to vampirically suck the energy dry of not only women but also his like own son and other people in his life, like I don't know, is it justified? No, but did it happen? Yes. I don't know what to tell you. All right. And I've got one more thing from this book, and then we're gonna tease the After Dark, and we're gonna come back and talk about some other fun stuff. That is very much the life and death of Pablo Picasso. Abby,
Wow.
good, happy, what a
Yeah,
monster!
very.
What a real
What a mo
monster!
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, yes, that just
Give me your impressions while I stand up for one more little move, okay? I want to hear your thoughts.
I mean, it's so tough. Uh, I, yeah, it's just so tough when people are able to give so much to the world in with their talent and their art, and in order to do that, they suck the lives of the people that love them dry. It's, I mean, I guess this is why we do a podcast called Art of Darkness, but it is heartbreaking always to hear that, there are people that are celebrated that the celebration of those people is hurtful to the people that knew them the best. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's just kind of exhausting. But I mean, it was very enjoyable to speak about his artwork, which is obviously so prolific and so varied and so layered and infused with meaning and talent and energy and all of these
And
things.
and shifting and new and changing
Yeah.
and moving with the time and never getting stuck and yeah, and I'm just going to read a little bit more, but thank you, Abby. What do you think he'd be doing now? We asked that question at the end. It's I don't even know. I mean, making art, right? He'd be
Yeah, he's still in that studio every day
is
making art. I guess
looking for another woman, 60 to 80 years his
he's on
junior.
Instagram,
Yeah,
just uh,
yeah,
DMing the models. I don't know.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I might keep some of this. Yeah, for later. That's fine. It's
Mhm.
sort of recounting his fear of death. So in any case, he's a quintessential Art of Darkness subject. He's going
Yeah,
up on the leaderboard with Burroughs, with Brando, with the people who seem to need to create victims
yeah,
along the way of like creating their art. Like it wasn't just enough to like be great artists. They had to have this like I don't know, this this carnival of like sex and
Mm.
attention and just need and need and need, in addition to just this, myopic focus on their work. And to say, me, I'm all about my work, but here are the many women who I've like knocked up and
Yeah.
just estranged children, and then
And
you're gonna see,
discarded and bled
yeah,
dry.
yeah, and then the we're gonna talk about the one son who we really just abused, to suicide. So, but what are you gonna do? I mean, will there be a genius like him in our lifetimes? I mean, I think I don't know. I think Kanye thinks he is, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
There,
You
there
know?
were there were a lot of moments where I did think about Kanye while you were describing the life of Picasso. Not that I think that Kanye hits those heights, but there the treatment of women and the changing of things. I mean, Kanye's
Mm.
a he's a producer and a rapper and a fashion designer, and you know,
Right. He's maneuvering on these different. Yeah, for real.
yeah, he's
Um,
constantly reinventing.
sure, sure. He made My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I don't know what else to say. I mean,
Yeah.
he made that album. So,
That was it. That it was that Kanye's music changes with the woman that he's with, the same way that Picasso's art changes with the woman that he's with.
and I want to ask you why you think that is and why you think that happens on the After Dark. We will open up with probably Lynch, and then let's put a pin in that question because I seriously,
Okay.
I want to ask you because I mean, Brad and I, we never got to the bottom of anything. I mean, we know less than when we started, but I genuinely wonder what is this dynamic of the artist and the muse, and then it's like,
Mm,
but it's vicious and it's not good, and it's take and take, and the women will kind of martyr themselves almost
yeah.
to the great genius. And I think we've moved a little past this as being like kind of an acceptable mode of
Mm.
behavior. But I think there's some primal impulse that sees this repeating. So I want to talk about it on the After Dark. We're going to talk about a few other things too. We are going to do uh, a bit from Catching the Big Fish at random, and we'll see if it has anything to say about Picasso. We will cover the business about the time that Picasso was accused of stealing the Mona Lisa. We will read the harrowing account from Marina, a bit of it about the tragic fate of her brother and her own father and the way that Picasso treated his family. Um, We'll also talk about the sad end of Marie Therese. She literally could not live without Picasso.
Mm.
And we will also finally, we will discuss his pathological refusal to acknowledge mortality. I will not die. Death does not exist. And that is that. And please consider supporting the podcast. I would hope that even if we didn't do After Darks, you would consider chucking in $5 a month just for the value that we give you. We do one of these core episodes a month. Abby and I are both taking on 6 this year. We do a bunch of dark rooms, and then we make the After Darks worth it. We do book club. There's a lot of goodies. Go to patreon.com/Art of Dark Pod and try to hit the ball back, right? If somebody keeps hitting the ball into your court, hit the ball back, right? Don't she exists? She's a human being. And your man, he exists. He's a human being. You may be the greatest podcaster in Christendom, right? I can't imagine what that would be like, but you got to take care of the people who fill you up, who nourish you. You got to think about what it's like for them. Do you agree, Abby? And you
Mhm.
got to be
I,
consistent.
100%.
You had to be so horny to be Pablo Picasso. 5'5", horniest manlet ever.